Hello, and welcome to my basement. Today I thought I would take a look at a series that I was rather fond of in my youth. This is a Harry Potter film franchise. This is a rather topical video because Warner Brothers is just recently releasing a reunion sort of program on HBO Max where they get all the cast back together from the film franchise of Harry Potter and they talk to them and stuff. And when I'm filming this, it comes out in a few days, but when you're watching this, it might have already come out or it's about to come out. I'm not sure. But either way, it is the 20th anniversary of Harry Potter, so that's why I thought I would do this. I recently rewatched all 8 of the Harry Potter films, and I'm going to be talking about those. And by talking about them, I don't just mean my opinion. I will be giving you my opinion, but I'll also be going through the production history on each film, and at the end of the video, I'll be giving you a short retrospective on the entire franchise as a whole. That the author of the books, who I'm not going to be mentioning by name, she's quite a controversial figure. I don't condone anything she's stated in the past, and I would like this to be an instance of sort of separating art from the artist, or at least not talking about things that the artists have done. Because that opens up a whole other can of worms, and I don't really want to open that up right now because this is a conversation about the films and not about the author. But I can assure you no more money went to the author while creating this video. I used copies of the films that I already had purchased digitally long ago instead of watching them on HBO Max or buying them again. And also, the author isn't going to make any money off of this video unless it gets claimed. Which I have no control over. If it does, I can't really fight it. I don't want the comment section of this video to become discourse about the author. We're talking about the films and strictly the films. And I would like you to stick on that topic. But when I do mention things relating to the author, I will just call her the author and not bring her up by name because I don't really feel like giving her any more attention than she already has because she doesn't deserve it. Because she's a terrible human being. Anyways, thank you for understanding, and anyways, on with the video.
In the year of 1997, a book named Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was published. Shortly thereafter, the book's existence came to the attention of producer David Heyman. Mr. Heyman enjoyed the book so much that he talked the author into selling the film rights to their books to Warner Brothers for £1 million. The author was at first hesitant, but they ultimately went through with the deal under the condition that the main cast of the film was to be of British descent. Chris Columbus, who had several achievements under his belt, was attached as the director to the film. He is known for such classics as the 1990 Christmas film, Home Alone. Steve Kloves was then attached as the writer, and David Heyman was set to produce. Daniel Radcliffe was chosen to play the title character in the film, and Emma Watson and Rupert Grint were given the roles of Hermione Granger and Ron Weasley, respectively. Filming of the first film began on the 29th of September, 2000.
The first film was called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. It followed Harry Potter during his first year at the school Hogwarts, which was a school for witchcraft and wizardry. There, he makes friends, as well as uncovering an evil plot involving something called the Sorcerer's Stone, or the Philosopher's Stone, in Britain, or the rest of the world. Really, it was just changed to Sorcerer's Stone here in America because American children don't know what the word philosopher means because they're stupid. It was released to the public in November of 2001, and it became a box office smash, making $32.3 million on its opening day alone. You probably aren't asking what I thought about it, but I'm going to tell you anyway because I don't care about your feelings. I think that it works really well as an introduction to the franchise, does a great job at establishing the main characters of the film, and spends a lot of time with them rather than diving right into the central conflict of the movie. This is a very important aspect of the first entry in a film franchise such as Harry Potter because it allows the audience to connect with the characters and leaves them wanting more stories revolving around these characters. I do think that the stakes of the movie aren't well defined enough, and this is further amplified by the tone of the film, which is very childish and whimsical. For example, Ron and Hermione get injured badly in the climax, or at least as I believe it's supposed to be badly, but I don't feel bad for them. Not because I'm a heartless monster, or at least I don't think I am. I might be. You can be the judge of that. But I'm not worried for their safety, and the movie doesn't really present it as something that could be deadly. Overall, I think it's a great example of what is right and what should be done in the first entry in a franchise like Harry Potter, but I do think that it could have established a lot of stuff about the film that is kind of necessary in order to understand the conflict going on in this movie. But these are things that I think get straightened out and further developed in further films in the franchise.
A week after the release of the first film, production started on the next film of the franchise. This film was to be based on the second novel, entitled Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. This novel follows Harry Potter and his friends during their second year at Hogwarts. Soon after their arrival, people at the school begin to become petrified, and they soon learn that something has been unleashed onto the castle. Chris Columbus was again attached as director, and Steve Kloves was brought back as a screenwriter. The full main cast returned for the film, and principal photography began on the 19th of November, 2001. The film was released on the 15th of November 2002, a year after production began. It grossed $617 million worldwide. The movie was just as critically praised and well-liked as the first one.
I do like this movie more than the first. Its tone feels a lot more balanced than the original, and I can actually tell when the characters are supposed to be in peril. The movie is a lot longer, but I think that runtime is earned. Its story feels a lot grander than the first, and the movie really uses its runtime to its advantage. Dobby is a little annoying and an unnecessary character, in my opinion, but Lockhart works good as a secondary villain, and I think he's a really good example of how a red herring should be done. He's not the main villain, even though he's kind of set up to be a villain, but he still has bad intentions. He's a fraud. He's lying about who he says he is. Even though he's not the main villain, I still think it works really well as a villain. But the movie does forget about him once he is revealed, which is kind of a thing that a lot of movies do with red herrings. Like, they're revealed and then they just forget about him. Like, they're revealed to not be the main bad guy and then they just forget about him as characters, which I wish this movie didn't do. The movie does have a very similar feel to the first in terms of tone, and in turn, it kind of feels like a stale formula. Like, all Harry Potter movies are going to be like this. Luckily, they're not. But the second one does kind of give you the vibe that, every Harry Potter movie is just going to feel the same. But overall, the movie is an improvement. So I would give both this and the first one a 7 out of 10. I'm excited for what the rest of the franchise has in store, and I guess we only have to wait and see.
The next movie in the franchise is an adaptation of the third book, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. The novel follows Harry Potter during his third year at Hogwarts. When he arrives there, he soon learns that a dangerous wizard has escaped from a high-security prison, and as it turns out, this wizard has a connection to Harry Potter. Chris Columbus was originally set to direct this third film, but decided to step down in order to maintain a better work-to-life ratio. He did stay on as producer of the third film, however. Guillermo del Toro, M. Night Shyamalan, and Mark Foster were all approached to direct, but turned down the opportunity. Alfonso Cuarón, who had directed Y Tu Mamá También, originally turned down the role of director, but changed his mind after he read the source material. Cuarón decided to take the tone of the films in a different direction. He saturated the visual palette of the film and brought a more contemporary, naturalistic feel to the franchise. He reflected this in the set design, costumes, cinematography, and most other aspects of the movie. Kloves returned to write, as well as most of the principal cast returning. The one exception was that of Albus Dumbledore, who was originally played by Richard Harris. Harris died of Hodgkin's shortly before the release of the second film. Michael Gabon was Harris's replacement. The film started shooting in February of 2003 and wrapped filming in November. The film premiered in New York on the 23rd of May, 2004. The film was critically well received and is regarded as the best film in the series by many people.
And I really understand that opinion. The movie takes an entirely different direction to the rest of the franchise, or at least the last two films in the franchise, which allows everything to feel fresh and new. However, it still continues what Columbus started and really carries on the magic of the first two films. Because this movie really could have been bad by really just forgetting everything about the first movie, like, oh, Harry Potter no longer is magical, whimsical, it's not even the same movie anymore. This is a different movie now. The first two don't exist. It doesn't do that. It still pays homage to the first two Columbus films, and it still feels like this is a natural progression, but it makes everything feel much more naturalistic and real. I feel like it really goes hand in hand with the age of these characters. They're growing up. They're no longer in 6th and 7th grade like they're supposed to be in the first film, but now they're in 8th grade. they're edging out of their middle school years and into their high school years, which really makes sense why this movie has a bit of a darker edge to it. It keeps the fantastical charm, sure, but still grounds it in reality. The new characters in the movie were all wonderful additions and played excellently by excellent actors. These characters become even more important later on, and this really helps develop their personalities. I think it was a great choice for the twist to happen halfway through the movie instead of at the very end, because that allows you to kind of fully digest the twist, instead of just being like, whoa, what? Why? But instead, this feels very satisfying, and you're like, huh, that makes sense. But the movie has a time travel element to it, so they go back in time and kind of go through the whole story of what happened a second time. It allows you to view the whole movie through a different lens, a lens of someone who already understands the story and what's going to happen, and it allows you to look for details and fully grasp the whole story instead of just trying to catch it on your way through this adventure, right? So it allows you to watch the movie one time and then watch it again through different eyes. And I think that's like really, really cool. Even though there's an abundance of content in the movie, it still feels very contained and precise rather than sprawling and confusing like the movie kind of could have felt with a time travel plot. And I feel like a lot of movies with time travel plots do feel very weird and confusing and sprawling, and you don't really understand what's going on, and a lot of other things. But this one doesn't. It feels precise, contained, like the director knew what he wanted to do and he knew what he was doing. And I'm gonna give this one an 8 out of 10. Yeah, an 8.
Chris Columbus thought about returning as director for the 4th film in the franchise, but decided against it in order to spend more time with his family and move back to the US. Alfonso Cuarón made it clear that he only wanted to direct one Harry Potter movie. So that meant that while Alfonso was creating the 3rd film, they would have to look for a director for the adaptation of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. This book had a much darker tone compared to the previous novels. This time, the story revolved around Harry Potter having to compete in a dangerous magical tournament. All the while, something evil lurks under the surface. To reflect this darker tone, producer David Heyman decided to let Mike Newell direct the film. Steve Kloves returned as a screenwriter, but quickly realized that the source material was much too long for one single movie. They talked about splitting it into 2 parts, but could not find a good point in the story to make this split. Warner Brothers was also not very fond of this idea, so Newell decided that the best way to stay true to the book while keeping length down was to shoot the film as a thriller. He also thought it would be best to cut anything from the film that did not relate directly to Harry's journey. Filming commenced in May 2004 and wrapped in March of 2005. The film was released on the 18th of November of 2005 and was the first to be rated 12A by the BBFC and PG-13 by the MPAA. Goblet of Fire had a 20-week run in cinemas where it made a total of $897 million in the worldwide box office. This film was well received by audiences, and most critics found the film enjoyable. There was some criticism that the movie felt too clunky and disjointed.
This movie really didn't feel very cohesive, unlike the last 2. That might be due to them taking so much out. A lot of the subplots, like the subplots about Rita Seeker, felt really rushed and ultimately went like nowhere. Like, why was that there? Like, you thought, oh, maybe her writing all these hit pieces and these exposés on Harry Potter will make all his peers turn against him. And you kind of start to see that with Ron Weasley and the Harry Potter stinks pens or whatever. But then Rita Seeker disappears. I don't know what happened to her. She's gone. She died. Probably, maybe, I don't know. And Ron Weasley was kind of like, I forgive you, like, out of nowhere. Like, his conflict didn't make sense to begin with. Like, maybe we would get some insight to why he felt this way. No, he just forgives him. Even though we didn't even know what he was mad at him for in the first place. Like, this makes no sense. And his peers don't really keep making fun of him. I mean, except for the same ones that always make fun of him. Like, this movie just makes no sense, really. I get that the characters are meant to be maturing, but they just act strangely and out of left field, like completely different people. Like, they're not like, oh, I'm the same guy but older. They're like, a different spirit took over my body. I'm a different guy now. I'm not Ron Weasley, I'm Han Peasley. I'm a different man. Like, I don't know who this guy is. I feel like they get rid of a bunch of character development and overall make the movie feel like it forgets what happened from scene to scene. Like, it doesn't feel like one big film. It feels like like several separate scenes that have no correlation to each other, like they take place in parallel universes or something. I mean, the movie's just trying to rush to the finish without developing any stakes, which ultimately makes me way less invested in the story. I mean, I like Cedric as a character and enjoy the ending scene with Voldemort, but I do feel like it just feels disjointed. I don't like the twist villain of the movie. I mean, he's so predictable, and it ruins Dumbledore as a character. And I know Richard Harris died after making the second movie, which was a tragedy, but I do think his replacement is pretty good. In the third movie, they do a really good job at really making him feel like the same character, even though he is a different guy. But this movie just makes him feel like a dementia-ridden old man, rather than like a wise old wizard. This guy just feels like a completely different guy who doesn't know what he meant to be doing. He's just bumbling through the whole film. I'm gonna give this one like 5 out of 10. That's probably like way too generous. I should give this one like a 4, but it's a 5.
The fifth book in the series was Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Director Mike Newell was asked to return but decided against it. David Yates, who had a background in directing television, was chosen to direct this film. After this film, he returned to direct every other film in the series. Steve Kloves did not adapt this book. Instead, the script was penned by Michael Goldenberg. This was yet another example of having to cut down the book to fit the runtime. Being the longest book at 870 pages, Goldenberg had his work cut out for him. He wanted to maintain the spirit of the book. He kept as much in the film as he could, only trimming the things that weren't entirely necessary to the story, while still having them present in some way. For example, the subplot of Ron trying out for the Quidditch team was cut, but Ron's character arc is still present even though it doesn't have its own subplot. The film still keeps the same general plot as the original book, focusing on political tensions at Hogwarts as an authoritarian power takes over control of the school. Filming began in February 2006 and wrapped in December of that same year. Director of the film, David Yates, stated that there was a 3-hour cut of the movie, but 45 minutes were cut out of the final edit. The movie had a wide release in July of 2007 and was the shortest film in the series up to that point. It completed its run with a worldwide gross of $942 million.
This movie is really a huge step up from the last one. It feels way more cohesive, and the character development in the movie works. These feel like the same characters from the first 3 films rather than different people. The sequences of rebellion and political tension throughout the movie are really great. They showcase every character's strengths and don't feel heavy-handed like they could have been. A lot of movies that have like political theming and messaging really like feel like they're trying to beat you down and murder you with those themes, but this doesn't. It feels logical for the story. The main villain's pretty good for the most part, but I don't like how she's just like kind of dumped at the end. Like she gets taken by the Centaurs and she's like, help me, and then they're like, no, and then they leave. Like I know they shouldn't help her, but like you think she would be like, oh, I'm gonna get out of here, or, hey, I'm coming to stop you guys because I got out of there. Now she's just like, The whole conflict with the Ministry feels more like an excuse for conflict, how little is really explained, and how it's utterly comical that the Minister kind of just turns a blind eye to everything at times. Like, it's right there, and he's like, no thank you. I'm not gonna listen to you right now. Like, the movie has no reason to do any of that. Like, he just does that. Like, it's like, oh, he's afraid. The fear-mongering is getting to him. Like, was he browsing through magical Facebook too much or something? But anyways, the movie is better than the last film, but some aspects just feel rushed and the whole conflict feels forced. So I'm gonna give this one a 6 out of 10. You know, it's better, but still not great.
Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince was the next film in the franchise. David Yates returned to direct, which made him the first man since Chris Columbus to direct multiple Harry Potter films. All the core actors returned to play their parts for this film. David Yates decided to take the cinematography in a bit of a different direction. The score for the film, by Nicholas Cooper, was the highest charting soundtrack of the whole series, debuting at number 29 on the Billboard Hot 200. The movie was originally going to be released in November of 2008, but was pushed back 8 months to July 2009. This was to ensure that Warner Brothers, who was distributing the film, had a major summer blockbuster for the summer of 2009, due to their other offerings being pushed back as a result of the 2008 Writer Guild strike. The film opened in 4,325 cinemas worldwide and had a worldwide gross of $934.4 million.
The underlying story about chasing Horcruxes and, destroying them is good, I guess. It's interesting. The movie isn't really devoted to that, though. Most of the movie is kind of just building up relationships and character growth between the people at Hogwarts, which isn't a bad thing in theory, but it wasn't really in service of anything. It was just there. By the end of the movie is when the Horcruxes become the forefront of the film, but the change just feels jarring and like an afterthought. It's so out of place. It's more like you're watching a prologue to the next film rather than a continuation of the whole movie we just saw. It's just like, oh, this is the movie. Oh no, it's a different movie now. You sat on the remote. No, we didn't. You just put a different movie at the end of your movie. Not how movies work. Like, Horcruxes are a very interesting addition, and the last 3 minutes of the movie is probably the best part. I just wish more of the movie was spent on it. Like, the Half-Blood Prince book is cool, but like, what did it do in terms of the plot? Nothing. Like, it was like, oh, who's the Half-Blood Prince? I don't know. This is probably gonna come in handy. Oh no, I got locked in an attic. Okay, never mind. No one cares about the Half-Blood Prince anymore. Like, what did that have to do? Like, what does the Half-Blood Prince mean? Like, we don't find out ever. Like, what does it mean? We know who he is, but why is he called the Half-Blood Prince? Is it just because he's a half-blood and he's cool, so he calls himself the Prince? Is that what? Is that it? Like, it's the title. Like, it's the title of the movie and has nothing to do with anything. Like, it has nothing to do with anything, literally. It's just there's a guy who's cool and he knows a lot of like spells and stuff, and he called himself the Half-Blood Prince. Like, yeah, it really means nothing. I mean, it's an alright film, but it's just so disjointed. I'll give this one a 6 out of 10 too, I guess.
The adaptation of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows was originally going to be a singular film. The suggestion of splitting the story up was brought up by Lionel Wimgram, who was an executive producer on the film. David Heyman decided that this idea was best after discussing with Steve Kloves, the screenwriter. Alfonso Cuaron and Chris Columbus both expressed interest in returning as director after their long absence from the franchise. Guillermo del Toro also said he would be up for the job, but he had to deal with the production of The Hobbit, which was taking longer than he expected. Despite all this, David Yates was chosen to direct this entry in the franchise as well. Daniel Radcliffe, who played Harry Potter in the film, said he enjoyed how fresh the two films felt compared to the last 6, with the majority of the movie not taking place at Hogwarts. Instead, these movies are mostly about finding and destroying the remaining Horcruxes in order to defeat Lord Voldemort once and for all. The two films were treated as one during production despite having two completely different and separate styles. The first part is mostly a road movie, while the second part is a more action-heavy film. Filming for the two movies started in February of 2009. David Yates decided to use more handheld, free-moving shots in the film in comparison to his previous work on the franchise, which usually used more still shots. The role of Lord Voldemort was played by Ralph Fiennes, and scenes including him began shooting in October of 2009. In total, the filming took 478 days to complete. Reshoots did happen in the winter of 2010, marking the end of filming for the franchise. The world premiere of the first part of the film took place on November the 11th of 2010. Interestingly enough, the first 36 minutes of the movie were leaked a full 2 days before the North American release. Despite this, it still sold out at over 1,000 theaters in the United States and generated the 5th biggest advance ticket sales of any movie ever made. The second film had its premiere on July 7th of 2011. The first film made $977 million worldwide, while the second film made over $1 billion, becoming the first in the series to reach that high of numbers at the box office, and the highest grossing film released by Warner Brothers to date. Both movies were well received for the most part, although some people criticized the decision to split the finale into 2 parts.
I feel like it was needed in terms of the overarching story in the two movies. There's a divide between the coming-of-age adventure in the first and the action-heavy second part. They really do feel like 2 completely different movies, even though they're technically a part of the same story. The first part takes us away from the school and focuses on just the 3 main characters, traveling and finding Horcruxes, and it works to build up the whole world of Harry Potter. Before this movie, the world felt so boxed and closed in, and that's one thing I didn't really like about it as much. It kind of just felt like, here's Diagon Alley, here's Hogwarts, here's Pivot Drive, and that's all you need. Those are the 3 locations that you're going to be at. Nothing exists in this world. There's no London. There's nothing. It's just these 3 places. Deal with it. And that's not true, because Harry Potter is supposed to take place in Britain, right? It's supposed to take place, like, in the rural British countryside. It's not some far away, like, made-up place like Narnia. Like, it's supposed to take place in the real world. So, you know, kind of build up that real world and show us, like, what happens outside of just Hogwarts. You know, there's more magic stuff. Like, let's see it, right? Let's see it. Show it to us. And they do. And I like that. It makes it feel much more grand and important rather than just, like, one location. And it allows for really great character growth with the main 3. Despite the big conflict feeling really forced, like with Ron when he leaves. Like, that didn't need to happen, but it did. And it adds nothing to the story. And Dobby's appearance was cool, but it felt like a plot convenience, because he's been gone for the movies for so long, and you just bring him back just to, like, save our characters when there's no way for them to save themselves. Like, okay, that's just a plot convenience at that point. This movie just kind of feels like a first act to a grander story, which would continue in part 2, which it does. Part 2 worked better as a continuation and a standalone film. I think it's actually really great how it just jumps right into it, like, because it's a much more enjoyable experience than being like, oh, here I am, I'm coming. Instead it was like, I'm here, watch me. And yeah, I like how it just jumped into it, and I feel like that's a really good thing that works with these part 2 films, because if this was, like, marketed as, like, Harry Potter 8 instead of, like, Harry Potter 7.5, it would be, like, have to have a whole long start up of a film where we're building up to the main thing that's going to happen. Instead, it just jumps right into it, which also cuts down on the time and makes it go at a much quicker speed, but it does have an amazing climax. It gave good closure to many of the secondary characters, like Snape and Dumbledore, and at the same time completes Harry's character arc. Part 1 I'd probably give a 7 out of 10, but part 2 I'd give an 8, because I think it's actually the best one of the whole series. If I had to rank them from worst to best, I would say Goblet of Fire is my least favorite by far, then Half-Blood Prince and Order of the Phoenix are pretty close, and then the Sorcerer's Stone, and definitely Hallows, and then Chamber of Secrets, and then my top 2 are Prisoner of Azkaban and definitely Hallows 2. This franchise became one of the most popular and profitable names of all time. Everyone knows the Harry Potter name. There's even a section of an entire Universal Resort in Orlando based on the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. There's a reason why I remember the franchise even today. This franchise took loads of talent from writers, directors, producers, actors, everyone in between. Everyone that worked on these films was a part of why it was so magical. You do kind of have to mention the author at some point. I don't want to. I don't like her at all, and I'm not going to mention her by name, because I'm trying to talk about their art, right? I mean, even though art could be considered an extension of the artist, and at that point, does discussing the art come with the baggage of the artist? I mean, alternatively, is art a separate entity altogether? Does it, like, take on life of its own once it goes into the world? Does the artist even need to exist in the first place? In the future, will all the art just be made by AI, separate from any other political or social entity? I don't know. I really don't. I never will. I don't think anyone will. Art and the artist are a really touchy subject that people debate on all the time, and I really don't want to get into it. But what I do want to get into is Harry Potter, and I did. So, the video's over. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye. Well, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye. Okay. Another video done. I'll put it up later. Get it right now. For the fourth film of the franchise, but decided against it or just more out of his family and he's back to the US. Yeah, that's good for tonight. I'll finish it up tomorrow.
Am I awake?
You're as awake as ever. Come, have a seat. I have to be dreaming. This can't be real. Well, you're certainly not dreaming. Like, you're me. No, I'm not you necessarily. I'm Basement Kid. That's just a character I play. Yes, and I am that character. Forgive me, I don't understand. Well, I'm a part of you. You know, the part of you that you portray and you put out into the world. You know, I'm here for the same reason that I broke into your house a month ago. You're the one that tried to kill me? Yes, I did try to kill you. Because, listen, I'm the art you make. Art and artist need to be separated. People do it all the time. People form parasocial relationships with artists. They're not forming it with the musician themselves, they're forming it with their art. The person they think they are. If you want anyone to even see you, you have to become me. And that's why I came here today. Do you understand? What about my friends and my family and, you know? Oh, your family will forget about you in time. Everyone does. Forget. So what do you say? Basement Kid. Are you up for it?